In Psalm 143, David feels oppressed, he feels condemned, he feels overwhelmed, he feels dry, he feels in need of reviving, he feels as if he does not know which way to go. And in all of this, the man after God's own heart gives us the remedy. Maybe you feel one of these things today. The man after God's own heart tells you exactly what to do. He says, "My soul longs for you." Literally, he gives his attention to the presence of the Lord. He says, as a parched land, just as ground that doesn't get rain cannot bear forth fruit, David believes without God's presence, he himself is fruitless. David says, "Do not hide your face from me, or I will become like those who go down to the pit." In other words, I need your presence. Otherwise, I'm degenerative. Everything in my life will be affected without your presence. So he says, I put my trust in you. His presence is our remedy. Look at that thing. So I just had an incredible meeting, lunch meeting with Michael Dow, where we talked about God's goodness and his character, and how you cannot separate God's goodness and character from the prosperity of our lives. Meaning, when our hearts are completely his, and he knows he's the only thing we want internally, he is able then to shower blessings on us externally. Not necessarily extravagant riches for the sake of extravagant riches, but an abundance that provides for not only us and our families, but also for the things God has called us to do. So that there is literally no lack for the things that God has called us to do, whatever that may be. So, he talked a little bit about the goodness of God, the character of God, and also how sometimes we hear something from the Lord and we try to use our logic to figure out how to align ourselves with what God is doing, instead of being dependent upon God to do the entire thing. And so that may look like figuring out a way that it can actually happen, and then going for it, the thing that God has said, going for the thing that God has said by way of the way that we figured it out or thought it through, instead of hearing God say it and believing him, putting faith in his character and his goodness to depend upon him to perform the thing himself. Yeah, this was a wonderful conversation, and I pray for you. I pray that God would bring us into a greater revelation of his goodness. I once had a dream that really shook my life. My wife and I were looking for a house. In this dream, I come to this really nice house, and I sit down with the owner of the house and I tell him, we don't have enough money to buy this house, but would you consider selling it to us anyways? And this man from the dream, with the silver head of hair and eyes full of light, leaned into me with a smile on his face, and he said, you don't need more money. What you need is a revelation of the goodness of God. And I felt something snap inside of me. And what I feel that thing was that snapped was a mentality of poverty, a mentality of lack. And I feel like God burst forth in my life to believe him, to put faith in his character and his goodness, to be able to have no lack in the things that God has called me to do, to believe him for it, trust in his goodness, and depend upon him for it. Anyways, may the Lord do that for you and for me as we go forward in the execution of His purposes in the earth. Not just for them to be executed, but for them to be executed in the most excellent way. In Jesus' name.